Yum, yum.
Hello all together and guten Appetit, Marshall.
Danke.
Hi, Winfried. How are you?
I was just on the way to my bed because Ralph told me today I look ill and I should sleep more. For the great mission of your team, I even ignore the necessity to sleep.
You're the big savior.
Yeah.
Very kind of you.
Later, if centuries later stories are told about me, I hope that they will remind it. And they were told. They told the others. Thomas was the first to recognize this special feature.
Okay, time to say hello, right?
Good evening. This is my role.
Yep.
Such as I have the pleasure to welcome you, everybody, who is looking and following our regular show. And we would like to welcome you today. And we have a little surprise, such as we learned that in some areas of the United States, we have had a storm. And my dear friend Thomas will describe a bit more what type of storm it is. But unfortunately, it was
the windy type.
Windy type, such as
the type with wind,
such as it could blow your roof off,
or at least the power grid.
That is exactly the point. So Dina Apostolou, which was planning to participate, is unfortunately without any power. Electricity, to be more precise. And so we couldn't make up to get it fixed. And luckily, our colleague Thomas is still with energy, but he said, I was in the area of that this could have happened to me as well.
Usually I'm the one who's affected, yeah.
And so what are networks for? Like you know by yourself, it's always good to have some friends and not only guests or even worse, enemies. So some people think that their friends are not their enemies. Well, depending. But we have trustworthy, reliable fans and friends and a community which is committed. So let's use that opportunity to create something what we already started. Winfried Felser, our spontaneous guest from the last Phil Winters episode, started with us an interesting talk about options, the ecosystems, the platform systems. And not surprisingly, we had today a chat about how a customer data platform will influence customer experience management. And links in together, integration and interoperability will become winning aspects in CRM environments. That was a starting point. And thanks very much, Winfried, that you took the opportunity instead of going to bed and having the needed rest to join. Welcome to the club. But at least we have a fantastic mix. Two people with a light hair approach, one with full hair and one with a little less. So two types, the Kojak version, which is one still of my favorite TV series. And unfortunately, that is no longer on reruns here in Germany, but I have to look for one of the classic channels.
Well, I guess Winfried and I are defining the standard of haircuts here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We hope that next time we have this standard as our general standard. So Marshall and Ralph, you know what that means.
Yes.
Say goodbye to the
Okay, Ralph, Marshall, you are on record now. You know that, yeah?
Yeah. Well, I'm working my way up to it. We'll all look like Harkonnens.
Yeah. Eggheads.
So you have already seen Dune.
But what,
Marshall.
I'm sorry, I missed what you said.
No. You said that we are then looking like Harkonnens. And I
Yes.
thought this is a mentioning to the film Dune.
Yes, the new one, which sadly I have not seen yet, but it appears that they, at least Raban, one of them, is working the bald angle very nicely. A scary looking fellow. So looks a lot like Winfried, actually, now that I think about it. So I'll try to be very nice today.
A little rest of hair sometimes, and more hair here. They said that I look more similar to Jack Nicholson, but I think but I think I have to find new comparisons.
And I should probably apologize to any Finnish people watching. I expect that the word is probably really pronounced Harkonnen, but in the literature, everyone has always said Harkonnen, so you're stuck with it.
Well, maybe the population of Dune is of Finnish origin.
Yeah, it could be. Sure.
You know, these funny, this, let's say, iconic band with these very strange haircuts and hair designs. These sometimes even that they are not drunk, they try to play music, and it sounds very interesting. You could say 12-tone music is a real art against what they do sometimes play. But I have seen those guys. I don't know what their names is. It's a funny Finnish name, and they are very popular in Finland because they don't take themselves serious. They don't take their audience serious. And they simply think it's a good show if people have a good laugh. Yeah,
that's important.
Yeah, same to us.
Well,
But
it's a good customer experience. See, on topic.
On topic,
Back to the topic.
Content management systems and their influence on the aspect of customer experience management was an idea we had before the electricity decided to change it to a certain degree. And what I thought is that the discussion we started this morning on CDP, DXM, and CMS with what we learned so far, we could take a bit forward, and we can touch, if you recall, what the discussion was starting on, Winfried, with Tom and Phil and Marshall, because I could not precisely recall what our topic was, what we would like to take forward, and asked Phil to spontaneously allow us to get you in.
Wow, we're talking about a lot of things. I think one topic was some ethical standards and mindset, and far beyond the technological topics. But as an old man, I do not remember more than
quoting a former chancellor of Germany. So what do I care about what I did say yesterday?
That's another point. And you know that Adenauer was here of our Cologne region.
Yeah.
And so I'm very fine with this statement. So who else can tell us what we talked about? What we talked last time?
Maybe Phil. But let's somehow stick a little to the original planned topic as well, because content is something that we are right now creating. Whether it will be good content or not, the future will tell, and the audience will tell.
Yeah.
Of course, we are convinced of ourselves, but that's something totally different.
And at least we have four live viewers, at least. Yeah.
At least, yeah.
Excellent.
Which is content that StreamYard creates and that I usually doubt. So these numbers are probably funny numbers. So the StreamYard folks really need to work on that. Because on the 3 screens that I have around me, I do see 5 right now already. Yeah, plus 6. No, actually 6. Yeah. So there is some deviation to reality, some real deviation on reality. So it's maybe the number of channels that are currently used. But anyway, so from a content point of view, so content is necessary for CX. I think or for providing an engagement which results in an experience. So in brief, relevant for CX. So
what is content?
Good question. So content is basically everything that can be filled into something which then can be consumed. This is
That's
Merriam-Webster, basically.
Yeah, that's some real high quality content we're giving right now.
Yeah.
Because I was in the past I was criticizing the content paradigm, or and I very often told that, for example, good content or bad content, should content have as a qualifying attribute always this relevance, especially if we talk about being useful in this customer experience, or is content simply everything you have within your journey, finding on your journey, or so?
To some extent, I think to some extent that has to depend on the brand, doesn't it? I mean, relevant content is always going to be important, but to some extent, just some filler, something that I'm having trouble expressing this, but the things that are fluff, that aren't of substance, the things that just make you feel that this.
One simple answer would have been content is what content management systems deal with.
Oh, yes, but I don't do anything simple. I babble. I try and make big sentences because hope that people get confused.
Yeah, because this answer would have been not that satisfying.
No, it's a circular answer, basically.
Yeah.
Marshall, by not knowing Winfried so long as I do, you just hit a very typical spot, a weak spot, a soft spot in Winfried, because he, in the old days, when he wrote the Black Messiahs, and he shared some of that stuff on content channels, and people thought, oh my God, is that guy crazy or what? The device is not connected. He just started his new microphone because Michael Jopen was so kind to emphasize that he needs either to eat his microphone or get closer or make it sharper. Yeah. Now we see what is happening.
He's acting on it.
He's acting and working on it. So what I wanted to express is he has often the comment under his postings, too long to read. And that was for him a touching point, such as how to achieve that something which is worth to be talked about, to reflect from the philosophical aspect and from sharing and talking about it, and how to make it understandable, such as how a complicated former customer journey from the Cambridge University, which he shared lately on his Facebook account, could be condensed to a simplified, easy to understand model. And this, honestly, is an art. Winfried is capable of, such as the simplification of complex models. And on the other hand, he is capable, like every professor, if he has nothing to say, he could talk an hour or two on the life of an ant, yeah, or how rats make sex, yeah. This is also a brilliant capability of a human being to create something out of suspected nothing. I just was reflecting that you made a post on the University of Cambridge model like that wrote, and you have the condensed with less complexity designed circle module out of that for your own thing. And what people, listeners and audience might not know is that you have a large network, the competence side, as one of your, let's say, content models, where you do a networking exercise on collecting content for the web and collecting content for business cases and business models. No longer.
It's competence side, and it is networking competence. And this, what does competence mean for us? Competence is abstraction of a capability to give something of relevance to somebody. And so competence, for example, could be for us relevant content, but it could be relevant relations. And with competence networking, we wanted to have a metaphor, really putting, let's say, a big picture on these silos we have nowadays: content management, networking, business networking, relationship management, and so on. And we said, it doesn't depend if I talk to a person, if I read an article, if I see a video or whatever, or someday I will be with my brain connected in metaverse or whatever. But the thing is, on an abstraction of our material world, is what happens. What is creation? From our point of view, creation is an ongoing, recursive, a fractal process of networking competence to competence. Yeah. So, and the form doesn't matter too much. Yeah. If it is a video or an article or a person or whatever, it matters the relevance and what is the impact. What can you do with it? And this is what for that, Marshall, I did this little provocation. Content is what content management systems deal with. Because I want to point out that I was provocating Mirko Lange, some pope of content marketing in Germany with this. And I said that, and therefore I asked this question, that if you do not give some qualifying attributes to contents, it's just some zero message somehow. It's
noise.
It could be noise. It could be noise. And for example, I have studied informatics, computer science, and theory of informatics. And for example, Shannon said always, information is only the thing beyond the noise. It is the thing that is really new and of relevance somehow. Yeah.
But now what? Let's combine those dots. So content, relevance, experience is what makes content relevant.
Yeah, it's always depending. This is an interesting thing. It's always dependent on the, you can say it's on the sender or the receiver, or it is dependent on the relation, or dependent even bigger of the context. Yeah. So
whose context?
Whose context of the context of this micro ecosystem would perhaps be now my answer. Thinking about a trans-Hellenistic world, I always tried to go beyond thinking in subject objects or in simple entities, but seeing the relation, or even bigger, the inner and outer network, the content, and then defining what is the thing we are talking about. For example, content.
You lost me. Transnihilismus.
Yeah. The thing is, trans-Hellenistic means after Plato. Whitehead once said that after Plato, the rest of the European philosophy was only Fußnote. What means Fußnote of Plato? Footnote. Yeah, too simple. Too simple. That the rest of the European philosophy and thinking tradition were only footnotes of Plato. And the thing is why I don't like the Plato and the work guy. It made us think in analysis, in ontologies, in categories, in silos, in binary logic, and all these things where we separate. And I think now we have a different tradition. We have a tradition, more Eastern tradition, of new connectivity, new seeing things in the context, not separated. So not something is something because it is something, but it depends. You have to look not only in one context, sometimes you have even to think in polycontexts to understand what really matters. For example, cat content. Yeah, if I'm within a scientific discussion, cat content might disturb or might be funny, but it's something different when I'm in a funny dialogue or whatever. So the context says something about relevance. It's not relevance. It's not, and even capability is nothing what is part of an object. It is depending on the relevance the context is defining.
So to boil it down, relevance is relative.
Yeah.
Yes,
well, who defines relevance?
Yeah, that's a funny thing. There is a Japanese scientist. He is mentioned in the book Vernetztes Denken, I think. Was it from Dörner? I don't know. But he differentiated the categorical universe. This is the typical Hellenistic universe. The relational universe, where he says we discover the relations and not only the categories of the object. And the last, Thomas, was the relevance universe, where we not only discover relations between objects, but we discover the relevance of relations in contexts, and that we have to enrich our thinking into this dimension. I think now we have lost the last auditors of our talk.
There are still some people in there.
but I think this was today my task.
Let's break it down from the. This is a pretty academic discussion, yeah. Not in a judgmental sense, but in a sense of we are
categorical.
We are coming from a category, right?
Yeah.
So now let's break that down a little into real life. Yeah. Getting out of our 4 people ivory tower that we are in here.
One statement. What does this metaphysic has to do with real life? If you look at it in this way, and what we call competence networking, it is a totally idiotic idea to separate CMS from CRM or from platforms or whatever. From a competence networking point of view, these have to be integrated.
Yeah. So, but let's start with a simple question: who defines what is relevant for me?
You mean
that's the relevance question and the context question? Yeah.
Yeah, there is not only some poly context, but it's some poly relevance. So there is the Thomas relevance of Thomas. Yeah, Thomas thinks it is relevant to talk here now with these other 3 strange guys, but Winfried thinks for Thomas relevance, it would be more relevant for Thomas to talk to his sister or write an article or whatever. Relevance has to do for me something with a job to be done and an impact for a job to be done. Yeah. But what is the job to be done in the context? And this is a decision. In this radical competence networking logic, this decision means not to have this objective. There's no objective relevance somehow. Yeah, it's not only that relevance depends on your point of view. Even there, you have.
I just want to show the relevant cat content we had already, such as. This is a combination out of a smart cat reading And the typical reaction in Germany would have been, behind these newspapers, there is always a brilliant mind.
Yes.
It's out of the Frankfurt area. Yeah. So now we have seen the cat content. We can go back to the more serious stuff again. But
only this last statement. When we talk about customer experience, we don't have to discuss if CMS systems have played their role. The answer is trivial. Certainly it has. But my critical question would be, makes it sense to have CMS as some separated island? So now I will be quiet for the rest of the discussion.
No, still. So now, who decides? Who decides what is relevant for me in a job to be done context? Because, well, at the end of the day, I have my knowledge, which is incomplete.
Yeah.
Yours might not be incomplete, but mine is. Yeah, so.
Mine is. So we are
so
all.
No, I said that to just not. Well, there may be situations when knowledge is complete, or where situations are, where information is complete, or at least complete enough. So now I want to achieve something in a business context. I want to achieve something in a business context. So I think I know a lot, but I'm researching. It means I know I do not know enough.
Yeah.
So now who decides what's relevant for me? And how?
Who are you, by the way? Are you now the customer? Are you the service provider, the resource integrator? What is your role? Drucker would have said the purpose of a company or the job to be done is to create a customer. Quite a lot of people thought that to create a customer is some categorical perspective, but this is nonsense. Nobody is creating some human customer. But customer for me is a relational topic. And customer for me is the relation that creates value for, in the best case, for both sides. Yeah. So the relevance in this Drucker sense is defined by the job to be done by the customer, but also by the job to be done of other stakeholder. And therefore, I have this co-creative ecosystem picture because nobody understands 20 years what I mean with competence networking, but co-creative ecosystems. It doesn't matter how we call it. We could call it woolly, but co-created ecosystem means that we have a lot of stakeholders and they together co-create and they fulfill some job to be done or a lot of job to be done, and they define the relevance. If you, Thomas, says you are sitting here because you are deeply in love with Ralph and every minute you spend with Ralph gives your life a deeper sense, well, that's okay for me.
Let's not discuss that one.
But no, I think Winfried is onto something because the two of them fight like an old married couple. So
look at Ralph's face. So
there's this strange smile on Ralph's face, Thomas. So no, but with this little nonsense, with this little nonsense, I only wanted to express. We have this. Multi-actor stakeholder networks and all, they have this job to be done and all they have competence, and we are having to create value creation has to connect it in this way that in the end customer is created in this Drucker sense. It means having value for this and customer as a relative topic, not as a category, so that every customer has his job to be done by a combination of competences of others. And in the best case, everybody is participating and everybody is somehow provider and somehow relative provider and relative customer. So, and this is the abstract view. And if you have this abstract view, every other thing. Okay, I think this is the last time that I'm invited in this group. But if you have this abstract view, you have a new view on CMS, relationship management, platform, marketplaces, and so on. You get a generic view. What is really the similar thing all behind, and what is the guiding principle between all this. And the discussion I had with Mirko Lange was that I said sometimes they create some contents with content plans and more content, and they never asked really for whom is it, what is the relevance for the person, in which decision or problem solving journey has it any reason to exist, and so on. And this is somehow la polar, and this is something done for its own purpose. Yeah, I think this is absurd. I just stopped talking. Thomas and Marshall, you are the only one in this round where I expect something senseful.
I'll try. I don't think that you can just say from out of the blue what makes something relevant. This is going to sound like corporate speak, and I'm sorry, but defining relevance is a conversation. It's a process. It can't just be from on high.
This is interesting, Marshall. One sentence, not to be misunderstood. In Germany, we have Habermas, and he had this discourse ethics. And he always said there is no absolute ethic, but we have to have some discourse on it. And this is somehow, if we generalize this Habermas principle, then we are exactly by the Marshall Lager principle from now on. Everybody will have later talk about this talk and say there where the Marshall Lager principle was invented, of this discursive understanding of relevance.
The left turn to Albuquerque, as we learned from Christie. Very important from a philosophical point of view, and that we created a test, such as with the cat meow teaser, we got not only her attention, and she's still with us because she is, I presume, curious how we will take the next turn back to Chicago, for instance, or to another direction. As what the advantage with Winfried is, I know that he is very tough in philosophy. He's very good at it. He's very knowledgeable. And
I try to ignore it. Consciously, I try to ignore it because I say that this is what I talk when I say Hellenistic thinking. We are all influenced by this tradition of centuries, thinking in this Hellenistic metaphors and thinking in these Hellenistic structures. And this makes it sometimes more difficult to think in the bigger pictures, or to see the things, the Latin people, for example, for their intelligence. Intelligence means interlegere, means to read between. So, and if you separate and analyze and do silos and scaling efficiency and so, this makes it harder to interlegere. This makes it harder to see the different things. So I think it's always good to have some abstraction and to look behind. But for that, sometimes we have to leave our Hellenistic tradition behind. Therefore, Ralph, I tried to read not very
Christie. She is cutting to the chase.
Yes, very good, Christie.
This
is the turning, the Christie turning point. From now on, only down.
No more bullshit for us today. We've actually got to work.
The aspect is asking the definition, such as if we understand what the customer or potential recipient of the communication is thinking and wishing, and what his intention is, where he has a benefit, then we can deliver through content management systems, for example, the relevant and needed and expected content he would like to have, such as we have then the aspect in one customer's head, such as I have zero expectation. There will be more. Okay, Alles klar. Absolutely, Christy, we are
She
with
knows
you.
us well.
And it's a lot of fun to have you in the audience. And if you want to come into the studio, feel free to ask. We can deliver a shared code. We have your email, so you are not safe.
So
Warning.
now what we have is a CMS, and we have the question, how do we make that add value? Yeah. So how do we make that create an experience, be it positive or negative for me? Right. So what else? What does it
Sometimes-
take? What does it take? So let's put this pretty well academic, categorical discussion to some real life. So what does it take for the CRM system, for the CMS system, for the CEX system, whatever they are called? So the system of engagement, system of record, system of content. How do we make it work?
Am I allowed to say something?
Sure, that's why you are here. Worst case,
Co-creative.
we mute you.
Co-creative. What do I mean? Even sometimes simply through self-service. Because what I do not like, for example, with CX, and I sometimes say that CX is not far enough, is that we still separate us as a subject and the object, and we decide what is good, or we have our AI and whatever. And as a user, for example, sometimes the thing I like most if I'm the sovereign and I have the options, and I, with my self-service, can create something, or I have somebody supporting me to create, but I'm the sovereign. I'm in, how do you say, I'm in the driver's seat. And then I'm happy. And I do not like, for example, content or support or chatting or relation. I do not like. Look at Amazon. Unfortunately, I like the Amazon experience. Yeah, I hate the business model, and I do not like Jeff Bezos. But the convenience, the autonomy of mine, the support where it is necessary, makes me use it. Also, I always have a bad conscience with it. So this is where I say CX should go more in a. CX is still even this größenwahnsinnig. What is größenwahnsinnig?
Oh,
in English? Thomas Marshall.
Moment.
I'm not getting the rest of the word.
Somehow-
Big.
Somehow we have this superhuman. We have this superhuman illusion of this transhumanistic. Yeah, we think we know what is good for somebody, and if we do not know it, we know it by artificial intelligence.
By the risk of being in the political area,
Yeah.
Your former president was somebody who came to the aspect of being größtenwahnsinnig.
Maddened is what Google says, but I don't believe that.
Well, that's too harmless, yeah, from my perspective. But
Yes,
Yeah.
but if we use now this word, I mean, we have to have an attitude of real respect towards the customer. And sometimes I even think that this dark attitude we had before, when we tried to push somebody through the funnel and make out of a human, we make money. That's the objective of a funnel. Here you have the human at the beginning, at the end you have revenue. And this was not very respectful, not very partnership oriented. And sometimes even with CX, I have sometimes the experience it's not really getting better, and the attempt to make it better is only some sugar, only some cargo cult, and therefore even it is some philosophical bullshit bingo. Therefore, I talked about this co-creation, who defines relevance, and for me, sometimes CX is just some other mechanisms, but the mindset and the interpretation of the world and of what is sense in our doing is behind. And I'm afraid what Christy is now telling. Sorry for everything, Christy.
Why do you say that, Christy?
And do we think we can get Amazon to sponsor
I
us?
would disagree to the statement, but the question is a good one.
And the question is, does she know which CMS they use?
I think Christy should join us, and I will leave.
No.
I tried.
No.
Okay.
Let's entice her. So, but no. So, what you said? You like the experience at Amazon. What makes it great?
For me, I feel that I'm the sovereign. I feel that I just get the right information. That for example, Lufthansa, Lufthansa or Deutsche Bahn. I do not like, or Air Berlin. I do not like Schoko Hearts to make me happy as a customer. But I'm really fed up of the Lufthansa. Once a year, I'm forced to make my Jahresabschluss and to give all my bills to our
closing.
So, and then I go to Amazon, and for centuries and centuries, I can find all my bills and get it out and print PDFs and so on. It's exactly my job to be done in this moment. It's not to buy, but to handle this information. And then I go to Lufthansa, and in Lufthansa, in the email, in very small letters, they write, "Hello, Christy." We welcome Christy into this macho roundtable. But only to point this Lufthansa. Lufthansa writes an email after with the PDF of my information of my flight, and they tell me in very little letters, in 3 months, or you not the PDF, you get a link, and then in 3 months, this information will be deleted. So when after 1 year I try to collect all my information and all my bills, I do not find it anymore. This is a simple point, but for me it's really tragic because I have to call Lufthansa. Oh, please, I do not have it. It was 2 years ago when I flew from Cologne to Vienna. And this is really a shit. They do not understand the multi-jobs I have. I do not only have the job to fly. I have to, for example, I have the job to be done to handle my bills, and they don't satisfy it. And this I do not experience with Amazon. And Amazon
basically, Lufthansa forces you to do your job their way.
Exactly. My job in their way, and sometimes they even don't fulfill my job to be done. And then I'm fed up if, for example, Bahn or other things try with chocolate hearts or with other things to satisfy me. For example, I once had a talk with the CXM manager of the Deutsche Bahn. I don't know if I have once told it. It was in a conference, and I was moderating a CX conference, and she told us how wonderful the Deutsche Bahn makes CX and what they have for customer journeys at every point, how they support it when you take your bill and so on. And I asked, well, I have this shit Bahncard 100. I have almost no touch points with you, and I do not give some. What can you do for me? And she said, oh, this is a really problem, Bahncard 100. We have almost no touch points with you. And I said, and what should I do? She said, get rid of your Bahncard 100, also kündigen.
For the non-Germans amongst us, this Bahncard 100 is basically a network card where you can drive the whole railway network. Bahn is railway, the whole railway network for 1 year at no additional cost because you already paid a boatload of money for it.
So it costs between 4,000 and 5,000 euro. So it's not very cheap. So I should get some nice customer experience. She told me, if you want really nice customer experience, then you have to end your Bahncard 100, and then they will try to get you back retention or what. So I did it. And do you know what I get? I got some invitation to some meeting with the CEO of the Deutsche Bahn.
Highly relevant. So now,
from their point of view, some employee thought, oh, our CEO, if I once could, he thought that this is relevant. For
I'd
me,
rather have the chocolate.
I even would have preferred chocolate in this.
Or a cat.
So I did.
Okay. Now as Christy now is here. So
sorry.
what?
Welcome, Christy.
Welcome, Christy.
Welcome, and thanks a lot.
Thanks that you just jumped in and took the opportunity, even that you said, "Nice try, Rolf."
So, well, it worked. The charm worked. So, how does a CMS contribute to CX in your eyes?
Open
You
the
are
mic.
on mute. You should switch on the microphone, Christy.
That makes sense.
You are on mute. Or on the wrong microphone. So just probably go into the settings and check which microphone is active.
All right, does that work now?
Yes.
That works far better.
It just became too much to type. So, okay, Ralph, you won this time. So that was my question. So, this is a really interesting topic for me, and I'm dying to know what value CMS plays in the customer experience.
That's why we wanted Dina here. The CMS is there to handle the content. The CMS is there to deliver the content. So the question is, the detailed question is a CMS there to decide which content to deliver?
To decide? I wouldn't say decide, but it's where we keep track of who will want to get what. It's where we record the conversation.
And we have an analyze. I understand that they do have some analyses about our behavior, our attitude in buying, and how much we spend. And unfortunately, I do honestly not know what type of CMS is behind that. But funny enough, the guy who was doing some of the algorithms is a German-based scientist. And I've had him in one of the early 2002 conferences in Cologne, and he talked that it is very important that they have the knowledge how networks are playing together, and that they want to exploit that knowledge to their advantage. As he says, if we close that room and shut the doors within 100 people, at least we find 2 which are connected to each other. There will be more. But trust me, there are 2, and they do not know about this. They are not aware that they know each other about some corners. And that was so fascinating that I was very curious on the algorithms and on the mathematics behind it, even that I don't understand it. And he said, it's very important that you liaise this with smartness in IT technology, which is capable of giving customer a good experience. And this, folks, is over 20 years ago. Yeah. And I was honestly stunned, but I don't know the system, Christy, to be plain honest.
So aside from what actual system by name they're using, how do you think they leverage that? So when I pull up my Amazon app, which I do at least 5 times a day because I apparently order something every single day. My husband says that if the UPS guy stops to see if I'm okay, if there's no delivery. So
my wife puts it the way I try to save the German economy by myself.
Well, exactly. And Amazon helps with that, right? So what is their CMS doing every time I go in there that's hooking me and giving me exactly the content I need to see? How does it know exactly what I'm looking for? It has to be reaching into other things on my phone, right? Because when I log in and I start to type whatever I want to see, it gives me suggestions of other things that I have recently searched on Google or Mercari or eBay or Poshmark. Now you guys know where I do all my shopping. So how is that CMS leveraging that information? Is it out there somewhere and the CMS pulls it? Is somebody giving the CMS that information? Is it listening to me in the background? Yes, we have an Alexa in every room. Sorry, there she goes.
Okay, Alexa. Right.
All the time I say, okay, I have the friendly assistant who is helping me to order something.
Starting from that, I think that the CMS is only on the backside of things. So the CMS is only asked to deliver something based upon what something else, which is the secret sauce of Amazon, based upon all your cookies that you have on your machine, still have there, is identifying as your interest.
Okay.
So the CMS is only asked to deliver something there. So from that point of view, it actually doesn't really matter what CMS is behind it.
And to play it in connection, as you said, today I experienced going for my Google favorites. If I take a break, I open up Google News and I get a selection of my favorite news. And one of these is a computer magazine with exactly collecting the data from Amazon special offers. And it delivers me a list out of which are the now from our editorial team found best buys in Amazon pre-Black Week sales. And there is a dedicated headphone, a company I know, a brand I know, and I said, I will buy that brand, that headphone when it's below 100 euros. And it was now 99 euros. And before it was 129. And it is a Bose killer. It's better than Bose QC45. And it's less expensive, a third of the price. So guess who is getting tomorrow his new headphone? It worked, such as the working together of the searching engines, of content delivery machinery like Google. They know your attitude, and you have, by free will, given them information on what you read, on what you search, and what you like.
That's true.
And then there is a pricing algorithm involved.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Say it again, Tom.
And then there is a pricing algorithm involved that might come into picture as well. So this thing gets phased out and price goes down.
No, it's not phased out. The interesting thing is it's an attitude of that company that for a year they have the price at the product delivery price, and then they go cheaper for at least 25 to 30%. And then this is a signal for the audience that in at least 1.5 years, a new model is up and running. Are they clever? Yes, they know that.
Thanks, John.
Oh, John Reed.
We got all stars today.
Oh, yeah, all right. So we got really famous, good audience today. So I'm impressed with ourselves. So well.
Ralph, did you send his invitation?
Well, yeah. Well, John, just say the word and then you're into for the past few minutes. Or the last few minutes, actually. My God, I didn't have enough coffee yet.
But John, it is a pleasure to have you here, and that you mentioned Drupal.
Yeah. Now, what do they need? And why couldn't the same have probably been done with WordPress, for example? I mean, there are a galore of good content management systems in there.
Dyslexia mode.
Yeah, which is quite a cool thing. Yeah, this is quite. You should read more Diginomica. We all should read more Diginomica. Actually, now I need to really make some raving ad for John and Diginomica. So this is a great source of information and opinion as well. Yeah.
All right, I'm Googling that one.
But again, so what is the purpose of extending on what John just says, the purpose of a CMS for delivering CX? What does it do to it?
Is it more expensive than Drupal? That's an interesting aspect, because WordPress is sold to the audience as CEO and housewife friendly, and even for kids to be manageable. That is the German version. Yeah. Aha.
Okay, so what is the purpose there? So we are bringing together demands, and we are bringing together the information that people need. So there is the relevance for a CMS to CX, in my opinion.
If Tom is having your email address,
John, I'll send you the link via Slack in a second.
Okay.
So Ralph, take over, please.
Like real-time content aggregation.
Yeah,
Just
so
keep bringing people in.
Yeah.
So is the AI embedded in the CMS now?
That is an interesting question. I think that something in between, because for instance, we invited Dina, and we have had Nicole France as our guests from Contentful. And when I was preparing, I found a guy who is now in a technical role, who was formerly in a startup called Market Logic. And he is the brain beside a lot of AI stuff, Carsten Winkler. And I thought this is such a cool match that there are some real innovative, let's say, people with a vision of how they want to create some stuff and how they bring it together. And they are now in that company called Contentful. And with the expertise of Market Logic did designs for marketeers, product managers, to collect information they need to create, for instance, a new product. Rules and regulations internationally at the push of a button. It was a knowledge masterpiece to collect it. And from there, I come to the point, yes, a mix between the content management, AI, and some other sources in combination are the secret sauce which give us the opportunity to get there some guidance. I wouldn't express it like they do all the magic, but such as they help us to come to a quicker decision and a guidance. I see that, try this. This is what I expect these days, not only from a content management system if I want guidance and I have an assistant, like in the good old CDC software Pivotal CRM had Merlin. And Merlin was the magic assistant dressed like a magician. And this thing about 20 years ago was so cool and so cute and smart. It had the role to give you guidance. Yeah. What was the funny thing? The Büroklammer in Windows?
Oh, Clippy.
Yes.
Clippy, yeah. Clippy, Karl Klammer in German, yeah. So
We hate Clippy.
yeah.
I kind of thought he was cute.
Still did it. So again, content and CX. Where does it get together?
Content or content management systems?
Oh well, let's start with the latter. CMS.
Who is in your expert center there in the competence side, Winnie?
Well, actually, content management and ECM was an important topic, and our top expert was or is Ulrich Kampfmeier.
Uli,
Tried,
okay.
and he tried always to make the change of paradigm. For example, once we called it documented management system, then content management system, then enterprise content management systems. And actually, I'm a little bit silent because I think I do not know if in 10 years we still have the old names of these silos. Yeah, because in this co-creation of CXM management systems, of CMS, of AI, of some general platforms, how will they co-create and who will have which role in this big pictures, and how useful is to have this silo? And sometimes I have the impression that there's some convergence from different sides.
Hey, John.
The hat and the whiteboard have arrived.
Guys, usually I think your session is now closed exactly when John Reed comes in. But
no way.
Why shouldn't we have some half an hour more?
We are not known for closing on time. So
John, it's a pleasure that you took the opportunity to jump in, as Christy did the honor as well. And we embrace that spontaneity. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thomas has jumped in a few times on my show, so I appreciate the chance to return the favor. I'll try to keep my comments brief so as not to fatigue your listeners.
You're never a fatigue. So you actually brought some good comments in the chat. Yeah. So one part of the relevance of a CMS for CX is the way of delivering, making it accessible, for example, which is what the dyslexia mode is about. So how did you get there at all?
Well, I thought Ralph raised some really important points. I mean, we started on WordPress because when Diginomica started 8 years ago, we were totally a startup, and WordPress is a very accessible platform. Now, the more complex you get, the more challenging WordPress can get. And, when we started, we were already something of a complex site, but one of our founders, Dan Hallett, knew a little bit of code, and so he coded that up. But then we eventually had to hire a professional development team, and basically we outgrew the WordPress environment. But I don't want to get too much into WordPress versus Drupal, because in the end, any CMS is viable if it has a community of developers behind it. That's the key criteria. And both WordPress and Drupal have that. So use cases are different for different organizations. But the bottom line is that you want a community around these open source platforms, because they're the ones that are developing all the plugins and making sure that everything is up to date, because you don't want that stuff to break and go unsupported. And, and you want to, every site's going to have niche requirements that create complications. But in general, I went to some shows evaluating Drupal, and I was really amazed by the scale of some of the customers and the complexities of what they were doing from a scale perspective. And I was like, wow, if they're serving millions and millions of users in all these like divisions of their companies and all this different customer bases, we can do it too. And I was intrigued by many things such as personalization, right? Which gets back to your CRM theme, because these CMSs, including WordPress and Drupal, are working really hard on this notion of how do you personalize the experience better for the individual. And some of that is an accessibility issue, right? Because, one of the great principles about accessibility is that if you make it accessible for those who struggle, whether it's dyslexia or they're visual or hearing impaired, the more you make it accessible for some people, the better it is for everyone. And so these kind of platforms allow you to do that, because then you can, with dyslexia mode, we were able to take that font and just install it onto a CMS instance that was already adapted to that. They could use it, whereas we didn't have to customize all of that ourselves. So it was really more, we did need a developer, but it was more building blocks than creating everything from scratch.
Excuse me. So basically trying to answer, what would be your answer to Christy's question?
Rephrase it one more time.
Which I need to dig out because it was a while ago.
I think I've fired like 15 comments into the chat.
Yeah.
No, I think it's the other one, Thomas.
The other one? Which other one? The one before?
Yeah.
By the way, I think Amazon probably has their own CMS because
I think so as well.
a company of that scope and resources is going to build their own. Unfortunately, learning from Amazon is a mixed bag because you don't have the budget that Amazon does. I'm pretty sure. I don't think anyone watching does. How does in one sentence, how does a CMS bring value to customer? Well, it's a trick question. I don't think it does necessarily. I think it puts you in a better position to deliver that value because now you're not caught up with a lot of the chores of content management that you would be in custom development that you would be otherwise. But that doesn't automatically put you closer to customers. It just gives you the opportunity to get closer to customers. Then you have to seize it. Does that make sense?
What does it do to do that?
What does it do? Well, it frees you up to work on the good stuff. I couldn't have worked with my team on things like our audio mode for our articles and, things like the accessibility products that we have and creating like event hub functionality for our partners to make it easier for readers to track events and stuff like that. I couldn't do that stuff if I was sweating like constructing like the basic building blocks. Your question is not unlike how does CRM get you closer to your customers. It's the same question. Out of the box software provides us with a basic framework, but from there we still have to make the right choices, and that's the thing. Just because your time is freed up to focus more on your customers doesn't mean you can necessarily deliver for them. So in that regard, like that's the problem with these things is there's no magic solution. It still you still have to be intimate with your customers and deliver for their needs.
Okay, so now if we're looking at one of the things that are a thing right now in the CMS community, which is headless. Why do you think that this, well, all of you, why do you think that is a thing? Because what is headless at the end of the day? It's offering the ability to get access via an API. Why make that much of a fuss around it?
It democratizes it. It keeps it from becoming its own silo.
Headless for me is always the picture like you have been guillotinized. Such as chop the head off. It's like Störtebeker after he was cut off his head and still was walking the body for 100 meters. Because it was said in the anecdote that the longer he walks, the more of his sail companions would survive and not be killed. Now, question is, what is a system able to do with his having no head?
Well, I think it's a compromise. John mentioned that the big sites very often has their own CMS. I would say they have their own platform, whatever, and they don't have to give the separate silos a separate name because sometimes it works together and you can call something a content management system within it. But I think they have made it by their own because they wanted to make something for their special purpose fitting in an ideal way together. And I think if you do some back-end oriented solution, you have more freedom to do your own thing on top. But for that point, you miss this great, some of the great functions John mentioned out of the box where you can directly work with. But this was what I exactly is my question. Will we have in 10, 20 years, will we have still the separated silos, or will some of the silos go to some back end and we will have some front end integration, or will we have some new topics, some new wording? I'm not sure about this, because if we look to the past, we had already some of these transformations in the past, even in the DMS, CMS, ECM, or whatever. And I think headless perhaps are for those who want to have a certain support and not start from the scratch, but to be able to build something individual, something special on it. That would perhaps be my guess.
Christy described some stuff. Please, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think there's a lot of value in bifurcating them, but they have to be able to work together, right? Whatever you've got on the back end, that's the technical stuff that your technical people are really good at. The presentation layer is so specific to industry, company, target audience, and you need to have that flexibility to make that presentation layer, whether it's accessibility, whether it's language, whether it's a colorblind audience, whatever the differences are, you need to have that flexibility for that presentation layer to reach and grab and maintain your audience so that the back end has a chance to feed it, right? They always have to be connected. But I'm a huge advocate of making sure that that presentation layer is user-centric and fed by all of the good work the technology teams are doing.
It's wunderbar, because you're describing that fabulosity which we had earlier, such as the magic in the black box, the artificial intelligence, which should give us a little guidance. It makes our jobs easier, such as I get the brochure I need for that dedicated customer I had on the phone or have yet on the phone, and I want to surprise him with exact that information. And I know I have it in my God knows where repository, and I find it quicker than in the good old days when I went to the shelf, I made an envelope, I wrote a letter, and 4 or 5 days later, he got his info pack. And he said, what the heck is he sending me? Yeah. Now we have a moment of positive surprise. Yeah.
And timeliness.
John, your take?
Well, I'm torn because I really hate the term headless. It just I try not to use it.
Makes it two of us.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I'll start using it when customers start using it, which is never. But look, I think separating the presentation layer, as Christy says, is actually significant, and I don't want to underestimate that. I think that's important. And
True, yeah.
one of the biggest things is that we go on and on about personalization, but one of the biggest things about that is just giving people choices about how they want to consume things. And when you talk about headless environments, you start thinking about all the different ways that I might want to consume content. And so instead of railroading people into a web browser or an app, like what if they want to interact with you via SMS, or what if you want to get partners involved, like, and enable them to build out, like to your point, Chris, about industry functionality. So to me, there's a lot of opportunity here. So I actually think when you peel back the buzzword, there is something there, even though I don't like the word. That I'm not going to sit there and say there's no close behind it. I think there's something there.
Agreed.
Okay, I guess in the courtesy of time, thanks to all of you joining in. So this was, weather. Yeah, weather in the Pacific Northwest. So it's as unpredictable as our shows, probably even more so. Thanks for the three of you to pitch in here. This was first highly appreciated, and second, great. Yeah.
It was fantastic. Es wird großartig.
Yeah. So I'd like to close it with one little pitch. On Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific, there is this Enterprise Hits and Misses show by this guy, John Reed, who has a real interesting guest with Hank Barnes of Gartner. And the topic is even more interesting. So whoever is still listening in to it now, well, you should take the clue of listening in then as well. So, and
Thank
not
you.
only listening in, as John wrote, bring your sharpest questions. Yeah.
Perhaps we can do the link under our
Videos.
Well, can I put the
Lots of time pressure.
You simply give a comment on your Facebook account, and it will be there, or LinkedIn.
I punch the activity in the comments chat here.
But will there be cat pictures? That's
The
what
LinkedIn, no cat pictures on that one, I guess.
I'm not coming.
Getting someone from Gartner onto your show is no easy task either.
That's
by the
right.
way,
Congratulations.
I had to jump through some PR hoops on that one. So
Well
this
done,
is quite
sir.
a feat for one, and the topic as such is quite an important one too. And the one who hosts it will make sure that it's great.
thanks, Saul. Thanks for letting me crash the show. It was really interesting.
Me too.
Love this topic.
Yeah, well, thanks for crashing it. Bye
Have a great
to
day,
everyone.
everybody.
We are going backstage now,
Thanks
and
for
hope to
staying
see
up
you
with